I'm W.D. Foster Graham, and I am your host today for the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'd like to open by inviting our guests to support our channel by subscribing to YouTube Insight News Minnesota. We are live streamed not only on YouTube, but on Black Press America, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And on this channel, we definitely have what we call some great conversations at 1 p.m. every day, or as Al would call it, robust conversations. Okay. I would like to just take a moment to tell you something about myself. I am the original member of the multi-Grammy award-winning Sounds of Blackness. I am the author of the Christopher Family novel series, and I am the book review editor for Inside News. My column is entitled Sharing Our Stories, in which I spotlight the books by Black or authors of color, as well as poets and playwrights. That being said, I'd like to take the moment to introduce our guests, and this is a family affair. Our guest is now Alphonso Jones is a retired U.S. Air Force major who served with distinction in the Vietnam War and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and 4 Air Medals. After retiring from the military, he embarked on a career as an educator, teaching youth in public and private schools in Hawaii, and later serving as the director of youth ministry for the Hawaiian Islands. And for the past 20 years, Al has lived in California with his wife as an active faith leader, passionate globetrotter, and deeply involved grandparent. Kim Nelson, his daughter, currently serves as an independent board director for Colgate-Palmolive, Cummins Inc., and Tate & Lyle PLC. Kim has retired from nearly 30-year executive career with General Mills in 2018 as the Senior Vice President of External Relations. In this global role, Kim was a member of the company's senior leadership team with accountability for the corporate brand, consumer relations, issue and crisis management, internal and external communications, sustainability, philanthropy, and government industry relations. Now, before this assignment, Kim held a series of operating roles, including serving as the president of the company's $1.2 billion snack food division. Kim was a founding member of the company's Black Champions Network, the co-founder of its Women in Marketing Network, and leader of its Women's Officer Group. She received her MBA from Columbia Business School in 1988 and a BS in International Relations from Georgetown University in 1984. She is the mother of 2 daughters and an active member of the Minneapolis-St. Paul community, where she lives with her husband and dog. And to round out this multi-generational show, we have her daughter Taylor Nelson, who is a junior at Scripps College, majoring in English, and she has written articles for the Saturday Evening Post and the LA Parent and Family magazine. Major Al, Kim, Taylor, welcome to Insight News.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for inviting us.
Oh, it's definitely our pleasure. Now, Major, since you and Kim co-authored Soaring and My Improbable Life, and I had the honor of reading it because Dorothy Nins, who is the president of the Minnesota Black Authors Expo, was singing its praises. So I had to read it and I couldn't put it down. Now, what were, like, when you wrote it, what were the events that inspired you to do it? And what is the things you want to take people to take away from your life, Major? Because seriously, no, my dad was also in the Air Force at the same time that you were. And share a little more about that.
My parents were a great influence on us to work hard, and she taught us to read, and she wanted us to be good readers. And I read so many books about foreign countries and beautiful activities. And I decided when I was 11 years old and in the 6th grade I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be a traveler, travel the world. And I shared that with my science teacher, and he said, boy, you better get yourself a good broom and a good mop and become a good janitor. So he just stuck a pin in my balloon. But I got to my English teacher about an hour or so later, and I said, Mrs. Kelly, do you think I have a chance to do some traveling? She says, sure you have. Air going back into my balloon. She says, we'll make a plan. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And so she did get back to me, and she says, you could join the Air Force. They got lots of planes. They fly all over the world. And she said, but if you're going to be in the Air Force, you want to become an officer because you get a larger salary and you have money to do all that traveling. Now, if you want to become an officer, I checked with the Air Force recruiter, and they say you have to take a 3-hour test to go into their flying school, and you also have to have 2 years of college. Now, if you want to get to college, you have to get a scholarship. You can get a scholarship in academics by getting good grades, or you can become a champion in a sport like football, track, baseball, volleyball, what have you. So we got a plan, and here's a list of books for you to read. These books will help you to get a strong foundation, so when you take that test, you have a good chance of passing it. So I was on my way. So we followed the plan, got all the way into, and my last summer of high school, University of Michigan said, we want those boys up here. They sent us an all expenses paid trip to visit the University of Michigan. And after our visit, they signed us up for an all expenses paid scholarship for the whole time that we'll be there. And it was wonderful. But after 2 years, I told my twin, I said, I'm going because my dream is to go into the Air Force. And he said, well, I don't know what I want to do right now. I'll just stay and get my degree. So I went into the Air Force. I passed the test, got into flying school, and had the most wonderful time you ever would have traveling all over the world as a navigator. 20 years later, I retired as a master navigator, air instructor. So I had a brilliant career, and my dreams did come true.
Wonderful. Major, one of the things I noted in your book was the perception in terms of Black officers. One of them was to say either they think you couldn't make it or you were damn good. Tell me about that.
Yes, that was a wonderful experience. I'm sure your dad went through that too.
He did.
But I was so appreciative of the Air Force giving me so many opportunities. I said, I'm going to be the best I possibly can. And I just did extra work to study to become extremely proficient. And that's why I ended up being receiving master navigator rate, because that's the highest you can get. You have a navigator wings, you have a star on it, and that means you're very good. But if they give you a reef around that star, it means you're the best that they have. You're among the best. And I really wanted to do it in appreciation. Plus, I always wanted to strive to be all that I can be.
Okay, and that makes an awesome difference. I also noticed one thing I think my dad and you have in common was what life was like on base as African Americans versus what it was like off base. Can you say what was your experience of that? Because I know everyone has this experience that's different.
Well, of course, on base was much better than off base. And, I ran into problems and I just let it roll over my shoulder. It's not going to stop me. I didn't get involved into any kind of controversy or what have you. I just stuck to my guns and stuck to my dream. and accomplish things that I wanted to do. If I run across people that were antagonistic, and I just walked away.
Dad, you do have a great story. The one of the you were leading a group of soldiers who could not find housing in the town, and so you went and spoke to the townspeople. Tell that story.
That was a great story. That was in Altus, Oklahoma. And when I arrived on the base, I was the first Black officer to ever arrive on that base. And the Black sergeants came to my office and said, Captain, can you help us? We have a big problem. Housing is very poor for military people, and we can't bring our wives and families here because the houses are too substandard. I said, yeah, I'll get on it. So I called the Junior Chamber of Commerce and told them I would like to come and speak for them. And they were so excited and wanted to know what this Black officer had to present to them. So I was trying to tell them that wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody could develop a housing unit for Black people, not just the officers and sergeants that are coming into the base making more salary than the local people, but even the local people who wanted better homes. And that would be a wonderful investment. If I had the money myself, I would do it myself. Just build a wonderful subdivision for African Americans. And this one lady said, frankly, Lieutenant, our Negroes are happy the way they are. And that's going to make me angry. I try not to be angry with people, hard as I can. But she pushed my anger button. I said, frankly, madam, you don't know anything about your Negroes. I said, because they're not going to share with you. They're afraid they may lose their jobs. I said, your people, your African Americans want the same kind of home that you have, and they want to be able to have a nice life. And they're not getting it here, and we need to improve this. Her face turned real red because I guess she never had a Black person talk to her like that before. So when I got home, the principal of the Black school in town said, Al, don't come into town after dark. I said, what? They said, you might get hurt. I said, what? I said, yeah. So I picked up the phone and I called the Pentagon. And I said, I've just been informed by reliable sources that I might get hurt in town. And I told them my presentation. They said, we're pulling you out of there immediately. I was issued orders and I was out of there in less than 10 hours. And they said, where you would like to go? I said, no, I'm not going to tell you where I want to go because it makes it look like I was trying to better my career. Just put me in the pipeline and I'll take the next assignment that comes up in the pipeline. They said, okay, we're going to send you to Berkshire Air Force Base. And that's where I met my wife. So that was a wonderful assignment.
That amazing story there, Al, because hey, we never know what one person can accomplish. And as I've seen that with my father as well, here at this Air Force base in Minnesota. Go figure. Yeah.
Eventually, they did build that subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
I went back years later, and there it was, just as beautiful as it can be. Somebody had the business foresight to see there's money there. And it was built for African Americans and other minorities.
Yeah. Hey, we never know who we're going to touch or when a dream will manifest. For Kim and to Taylor, I know, Kim, you co-authored Soaring with your father. And what I would like to ask is, what were the most important messages that the two of you were seeking to convey in writing this book? And also how that has impacted you in your life and Taylor in yours, since we're talking about legacy. Kim?
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much for having us on the show, WD. It's really a special thing to have my dad and my daughter together talking about, how these stories connect and pass through generations. I think some of the big themes, I remember when my dad approached me and said, I'm thinking about putting my life story down. I thought, I think at that point, Dad, you were 89. And, I thought, okay, great. We'll see what happens. But I remember coming out to LA, and he'd written the first 25 pages of the book, and it was fantastic. And I started to realize he wrote this whole book. I'm co-author, but I edited. Dad wrote this book. And I realized as I was reading some of these stories, which I've grown up on, so I know these stories, but you don't really step back and think about them the way you do when they're all put together into one book. And as I was reading it, I started to feel that there were really important themes in my dad's life that would be relevant to anyone, anyone who has a dream. There's a theme about having a dream. Dad had this big dream when he was in the 6th grade, and this dream really carried him through almost his entire professional life until he left the military. And not just having a dream, but preparing yourself to be able to fulfill your dream. That's another big theme in my dad's life, and overcoming hardship. My dad grew up in the Depression. He was the eldest of 6 kids. His parents had not a whole lot. His father was a mechanic. His mother, worked, I think she was cleaning train cars, something like that. And so this is someone who has had all these things and yet thought, why did he think he could do all that he did? What gave him this crazy idea that in that day and age, he was born in 1932, that he could become, an officer in the military? So a second theme is about the power that adults can have and impacting young people with encouragement, giving them some ideas on what they can do. And of course, it's always on the child, whether or not they really take the bait, so to speak. But boy, you hear the stories, like he shared the story of Miss Catlett versus Mr. Jackson. And also the power that adults can have to discourage and completely change the trajectory of a child's life. So I think that's an important message in the book. The role of the military as an integrating institution in America is something we don't think much about. But for so many Black men, this institution was their way out of poverty, their way of achieving respect, et cetera. And then lastly, I think in my dad's story, this message around service and the value of service and the belief that one should invest to make the community better wherever you are. And you'll see in my dad's story, whether he was in England or where he, basically started up a church on the military base or, whatever part of his life, he always tried to make the community better and spent his time, talent, training, and treasure to do so. And that I know has been very inspiring to me in my life. So a lot of big themes, I think, to chew on.
Thank you, Kim. Taylor.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here. I think reading the book was really like a cool experience for me in the sense that I had heard a lot or most of the stories that are in the book many times growing up as a little kid, but I think I heard a little bit of an abridged version of a lot of them. And a lot of the adversity was left out, I think, when I was younger. Like that story you just told, Grandpa, I had never heard that. I knew you were the first Black officer on the base, but I had never heard that you were threatened in some way. And so I think reading the book was it was like reading a whole new life experience a little bit, and kind of seeing how much adversity you did have to overcome, and that in the end, it is the positivity and like the most impactful things on the community that you did, which are the parts that kind of stayed with you and that you put back out into the world. And so, yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from the book is that you can go through a lot of adversity and come out of it as such a wonderfully positive person with a beautiful outlook on life.
Wonderful. Major, I'd like to ask you, tell me about your journey after the military to become an educator.
Well, today, when I wake up each morning, actually, I wake up with a song in my heart and a prayer. And the prayer is to thank the Lord for another day. And my day is busy. I'm a very optimistic person, so I'm looking for all the beautiful things that I'm going to be exposed to during that day. And it's very wonderful. I still go to church every Sunday, and it's so wonderful to have people come up and share with me a memory. And I'm trying to see who these people are. But, it's very difficult. And I can tell by their age whether it was a teenager that I taught or took on some field trip to France or to Rome or to Six Flags or the Disney land. And it's just wonderful. But I act like I know the person, oh, how are you? Haven't seen you in a long time. Have no idea who this person is. And I always thank my wife. We've been married 67 years, and my children and grandchildren who support me so much tender loving care. And that's really what it's all about. And I just enjoy the fact that I have around me family and friends who are so supportive. And it's just a wonderful life.
Dad, what motivated you to become a teacher?
Oh, Mrs. Catlett, of course.
Mhm.
Mrs. Catlett, what a wonderful woman. Look how she influenced my life. And I said, Al, you owe a debt. You have to become a teacher, and you have to influence other kids' lives. Look how this one lady influenced your life. Suppose I had not gone to any other teacher. Would I still had that dream of flying, or would it have been crushed by a teacher who was not sensitive?
Mhm.
But look how she just got in there. Look at all the research she did to prepare that plan. I said, Al, this is what you got to do when you get out of the military. So you have to take 2 years of college and get your degree. Get your degree in education and get into schools and help children and take children all over the world. I took 40 kids to Paris, France for World Youth Day in 1997. Then I took 30 or 40 kids to Rome, Italy for World Youth Day in the year 2000. And we went to Denver for World Youth Day in the year 1993. And then locally, we go all over the place. We take kids to the beach so that as they are getting their education, they're having wonderful experiences working together and having fun. To be able to teach kids so that they are having fun while they're learning is such a wonderful gift.
Dad, you taught, so when you retired from the military, you taught for many years. In fact, I don't know, WD, if you knew this, but my dad was my teacher. So
All right.
he was my
Hey.
school teacher. He's my math
Uh-huh.
teacher, if you can
Mhm.
imagine that. But you taught for many years, both in parochial schools. I went to Catholic school, but also in the public school system in Hawaii. We lived in Hawaii.
Right.
And then, once you retired from teaching, and throughout while you were teaching, you were also involved in teaching through the church, whether it was youth groups or RCIA programs and so forth. And then you taught overseas as well.
Yes. Kim went to Montpellier, France for her school. And Muriel and I said, well, we got to get to Europe. We want to be close by. So I accepted a job teaching in a Department of Defense school in England. Wethersfield in England is such a wonderful experience to be able to do that. And when I arrived there, to my horror, they didn't have a Catholic church. I said, oh my Lord. So I found a British priest. I said, you have to come down and take care of us. And I will be calling the chief of Catholic chaplains to appoint me as administrator so that I can pay you. And he did. And when I started paying him for everything that he would come down and do for us, he said, oh my goodness, you guys pay a lot of money. But things can get done and get things done if you just apply a little work to it and just work hard to achieve and accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Makes a powerful difference. So that being said, I'd like to ask Taylor, how do you see yourself in ways you pay this legacy forward?
That's an excellent question. Well, this is something that kind of applies to both of you guys' legacy, I think. And I was going to talk about this a little bit with your other book, Mom, but just the concept of gratitude and paying that gratitude forward and translating it into kindness towards others in your everyday life. I mean, I remember when I was young, and now we just don't see each other quite as much, but my mom would always ask me, did you do something kind for someone today? Or at the beginning of the day, she would say, make sure you do something kind for someone today. And when I was young, I was like, okay, Mom, I will. I'm always kind. But I think now I think about that and I see a lot more value in it now. And I think it's something very core to both of you guys, who you are, is, being so humble about what you have done and what you have built for yourself and wanting to have that translate into something positive for other people, I think is a really beautiful lesson to have learned.
Awesome. Now, we have heard different stories, from the book, and I for one say they're very inspiring. So we'd like to share an excerpt from Soaring.
Sure. I've got so many favorites. It was really hard to pick one. But the one
I know.
Yeah, you've read it. So
I know.
But here's the one I picked. This is, Dad mentioned he was at Altus, and transferred to Bergstrom where he met my mom. So this is his arrival on Bergstrom Air Force Base. So Bergstrom Air Force Base was designated as a strategic air command base within the military and housed many critical top secret activities. I arrived a few days early to get settled in before my start date. I drove through the gates to enter the base in a brand new Ford convertible, my present to myself for my promotion to second lieutenant. I was dressed in civilian clothing. The guard on duty glanced at the military ID card I offered and casually waved me through. I drove a few feet, then slowly came to a stop, shaking my head, and reversed the car back through the gate. I addressed the guard harshly. "Stand at attention, airman." He immediately snapped to attention. "Do you realize you are in gross dereliction of duty?" I exclaimed. "Either you failed to render proper courtesy to an officer, or you failed to accurately read the identification I presented. Which is it?" The guard began to stammer out a response, but I interrupted him. "Do you know what would happen if I reported this infraction? This is a highly classified facility, and laxity this morning is inconsistent with base protocol and entirely unacceptable." I will not tolerate insubordination or mediocre performance. Do you understand me? And I drove on through the gate onto the base. I knew full well that I was likely the first Black officer the Guard had ever seen, but failure to salute an officer in or out of uniform is a serious breach of military courtesy. I also knew that other Black officers were being transferred from Altus, Oklahoma to Bergstrom, and believed it was important to establish from the get-go that we would not tolerate being treated differently than any other similarly ranked officer. The military was a unique integrating institution in America at this time in our nation's history. It was a society within a society that operated according to its own unique hierarchical code. Where you stood in the hierarchy was broadcast to all via badges and insignia on your uniform, and it was clearly indicated on the military identification you carried with you at all times. Rank was the great equalizer. It shredded the norms of race relations prevalent in the broader society by superimposing a new framework for accruing, distributing, and demonstrating authority and respect. The rules for how junior and senior military personnel were to interact were clearly codified in handbooks that detailed proper military protocol. Infractions were punishable within the closed society's disciplinary system. The playing field was still not entirely level. Promotions could still go to the candidate who, quote, felt like a better fit, but the day-to-day racial microaggressions supported by in the broader society were not tolerated in the military. Young Black men like myself joined the military in droves for the opportunities for career advancement and skill acquisition that were on offer, but often stayed for the benefits of working in an environment where for the first time racial prejudice was not tolerated as a matter of policy.
Powerful.
Let me say a few words about that. It is so funny. When I reported to my commander, Colonel Stemmy, he said, "Oh, you're the one. You're the one that's causing all the problems on the base. You just got here." and listen to this. He said, "But you're absolutely right." He said, "This is a high security base, and we have to have absolute strong security at that gate. So I want to commend you on checking and chastising that security person at the gate for not doing his duty. Good job." Now, he didn't see the racial thing at all. What he saw was a person was not up to their par at the entrance to a base that was one of the highest security bases in America. Isn't that interesting? That's what he saw. Very interesting.
Truly, truly. So, because sometimes the biggest breaches are at the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
They definitely are. So, at 91, Major, what are your dreams at this stage of your life?
Well, they're very easy to do. Just take one day at a time, enjoy my life, be able to have a good filing system. So if I'm invited to give a talk to a group of people, like I gave last month, I gave a talk to about 200 ladies who were mothers of Eagle Scouts. So I pulled out all my scouting material and presented a presentation to them at their luncheon, which went over very well because I was so tired after it. I wanted to just take it easy. And I still had to take pictures for 30 minutes. Everybody wanted to take pictures. So I said, I don't know what I said, but I guess it went off very well. I just want to have a good time, relax, and I definitely want to be able to thank all the people who have influenced my life and are influencing now and helping me. My wife of 67 years, my children and grandchildren, all who provide so much tender, loving care for me at this age. And it's just wonderful to be in that environment. Life is good.
Indeed it is. And
Before we
thank you.
started, before we started WD, Dad said that his goal is to make it to 100, but listen to the reason why.
Yes, I'm curious.
My mother celebrated her 100th birthday. And
Ah,
she was so active. She could walk on her own, and she had a good appetite. She knew her children and her grandchildren. She didn't know a few of her great-grandchildren, but she knew her children and grandchildren. She had a wonderful time. And it was so many people that wanted to be at the celebration. We had to use the church hall to do it, and the church, provide all the support for it. And I said, wow, I want to live to be 100.
Just wants to live for the party.
Oh,
And they have
yeah.
some great parties.
There you go. There you go. That being said, yeah.
Yes.
No, growing up with your dad, your parents and stuff, how did motherhood fit into your dreams? What
Yeah.
prompted you to write your book on life things I should have told you for your daughters?
Well, sure. Well, you can see I grew up with just incredible parents, which, the older you get, the more you realize what a blessing that is to grow up with people who, of course, parents love their kids, but who inspire you and who teach you and not just teach you, like tell you what to do, but teach you through the way that they move through the world. And you get that front row seat of, this is a way you could do your life. And you can see, I mean, they've done their life well. I'm tracking right behind them. And, my mom's not on camera today, but she's equally inspiring in, the way she takes care of her family, the way she takes care of herself. So to your question, I always wanted a family of my own. I always wanted that, and assumed I would have one. But I also wanted to have a successful career. And I grew up on my father's knee, hearing about traveling to all these amazing places. And, I kind of have a bit of the travel bug as well from my dad. So as my career came together, I knew that career's good. I wanted to have a strong career. I wanted to be self-sufficient. But I knew that my bigger goal was always to have a family. So fast forward, I had my two girls, and I always will say, there's no business. A lot of people know me from business career. There's nothing I've done. There's no business accomplishment or something I've done in any of my roles professionally that compares at all to this accomplishment of, raising these two intelligent, beautiful on the inside and out, interesting women that I like to spend time with and that I feel, are just amazing people. I can't believe that I had anything to do with them being here. But I wrote my book when actually my first daughter, Sammy, who's 24, when she went to college. And that's the rough draft of the book that eventually got published. And I wrote it because, like many parents, you just have this, they're leaving. I hope that they have what they need, because the world is hard. It's hard for women. It's certainly hard for Black women. And, you just want them to be prepared. And so my thought was, how do I put it all in one place? My thoughts, my beliefs about, life and the key topics. And, it's the kind of thing where that no self-respecting 18-year-old would sit down and listen to you pontificating about these things. And yet, you know what they're going to go through in life, the basics of what happens to all of us. And you want your perspective to be captured somewhere. And so that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, I can say when I read it, I think when I thought about it, I thought about Regina Bell's song, If I Could. And it's in your book, it's definitely a testimony to that.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of daughters, Taylor is there a favorite chapter in your mother's book that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, there is. I do have a favorite. I chose an excerpt from On Courage. It took me a while to pick because all of them feel very salient to things that you've told me over the years, but I particularly like this one. Start with, there is also the matter of having courage to speak out when something is wrong or doesn't make sense, or having the courage to speak on behalf of someone who is wronged when they can't find their own voice. Sometimes something as simple as speaking the truth, especially to those in authority, requires courage. We call this speaking truth to power. You will grow stronger each time you overcome your fears and say and do what you know to be right. The problem is that if you become too anxious to avoid failure, you will do only the things you know how to do and confine yourself to situations in which you feel comfortable. Beware of this temptation. It is extremely limiting. It will prevent you from trying new things that will be amazing for your personal development and growth. Get comfortable with discomfort. Hold yourself in the space of discomfort so you learn how to conquer it. All great endeavors in life require risk-taking, and inherent in risk-taking is the possibility, even likelihood, of failure. Embrace it. It gets easier, by the way. The fear never goes away, but your confidence in navigating it strengthens. Like most things in your life, if you practice, you get better. Each situation you overcome builds confidence, and you'll find you have more courage available the next time you find yourself in a challenging situation. You just have to stick with it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Taylor.
Yes.
I would like to say a few words about that too. When my wife and I would visit Minnesota, when the kids were very, very small, of course, they would go to the airport and pick us up, and the kids thought we lived at the airport. Yeah. When they saw us, they would run at fast speed. And I said, oh my Lord, I would back up to the wall because they're running so fast, they would knock me down. And I had to have my back to the wall to be able to, to hug them and not be knocked to the ground. We had such a loving relationship with all our grandchildren.
Oh, so which would lead to my next question, because as children we learn from our parents. So to you, Major, and to you, Kim, what have you learned from your children?
Oh, wow.
I like that question.
Wow, I got to think about that one. What have I learned from Taylor? You know what I've learned from Taylor? I actually, she may not feel this way, but I think she is very creative, and I think I've learned about, letting that side of yourself come out. I'm thinking, T, of when you were in high school and you did the whole BNN broadcasting thing. I mean, that's a very, all that, writing scripts and all that kind of stuff, that creativity, I found that to be very inspiring. And even when you wrote your blog, when you took that year off, there's this creative part of you. And, you had that candle making business. And so anyway, I think I find that to be, a very inspiring part of being your mom, watching that and wondering if I am tapping into my own creativity as much, what is my creativity that I just leave on the table because I'm always busy rushing around doing my business kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure you have the same thing. We just don't know what it is.
Major, what have you learned from your children?
Well, I learned that they're independent and they have their own way of doing things. But one thing I learned was that they also got the travel bug. Oh my grandchildren are very comfortable traveling all over the world and seeing new places. They're comfortable with doing that. And that's part of the legacy.
Yeah, Dad always said, I raised you to be become a citizen of the world. Never forgotten that. Mhm.
Oh yeah, I can testify to that too, because since my father, being in the Air Force, just like Major, he just traveled different parts around the world, and that passed down to my brother, who worked for the airline, so he was traveling,
Wow.
and now now that has come down to my son, who's now 23, and who has the travel bug as well.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
So I would, Kim, is there a favorite excerpt from your book that you would like to share with us? We have about a few minutes before break.
A few minutes. Okay. I was thinking of reading the poem that I wrote at the end of the book.
Wonderful.
It's called Claims of the Flesh, dedicated to my daughters. Daughter mine, you belong to me, but others claim you, going back and back all through time. I can see their arms outstretched, yearning for you to do what they could not. And if you feel their strength within you coursing raw and wild, do not be afraid, for these were strong women. And if their sorrow sometimes saturates you, know that they have wept your tears. And in your moments of ecstatic joy, know that they too have touched the sky and celebrate with you. And when that drumbeat pounds your soul, do not fear its release. Let your hips sway to the dance. It is a part of you. You may feel that they are watching. They are. You may feel them holding you accountable. They do. You may feel their love surround you. It does. Your life is their legacy. Their love is your inheritance. Their expectations are great, and you are ready. Daughter mine, you belong to me, but others claim you. Listen for their whispers in your dreams. Honor their sacrifice. Respect their struggle. All they ever hoped for and dreamed is in you, and you are ready to take up this burden.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Kim. Now, on that note, we're going to take a short break and then we'll be right back.
Are you or someone you know recovering financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, or any other reason? If so, help is available. Findhelp.org is a site to find a wide range of resources, including food, medical care, and more. The best part is based on your zip code. Visit findhelp.org, enter your zip code and the service you need. You'll get a map directing you to the organizations that can help you. Help is waiting at findhelp.org. If you need help starting anew, findhelp.org is the site for you.
Thank you. We are having our guest author segment on the Conversation with McFarlane, featuring Major Alphonso Jones, his daughter Kim Nelson, and his granddaughter Taylor Nelson. Major Jones, one part of the book that I know is because you spent a significant amount of time there was Hawaii. Can you share more with our viewers about your experience of life there?
Hawaii was so fabulous. Right after we got married, less than a year after we got married, I was offered an assignment to Hawaii. It was a mandatory assignment for a navigator. And so the assignment was such that no commander could stop it. If the navigator wanted to volunteer for this top secret assignment, he could go. So my commander in Austin, Texas, he was talking people out of it. And when he got to me, he was ready to talk me out of it so that I wouldn't volunteer. I said, wait, Colonel, don't say a word. I've always wanted to live in Hawaii. I said, I've always wanted to live in Hawaii. He said, but it's too expensive for a second lieutenant. I said, that's okay. My wife just got her degree teaching and we can make it. But I've always wanted to go and I'm going. And I thought he might get a little upset. He says, you know what he said? He said, you know, Al, you have been such an influence in my squadron. I'm going to recommend you for first lieutenant. And I'm very happy that you're going. I'm going to miss you because I'm going to miss your skills. But I know you will be an asset there. And I'm happy that you are going. And good luck. Interesting. And then when we got to Hawaii, it was fabulous. No place in the world like Hawaii. But the most funny experience was at my squadron, we always have a couple meet a new couple coming in. And it was Muriel and my time to greet a new couple coming in. And we greet them with a lei, with flowers, you know, and we show them around the base and everything. And this was a white couple. And by this time, we were thoroughly acclimated in the Hawaiian culture. So they came up and I put the lei around her neck and gave her a kiss. And put the lei around the husband's neck and gave him a kiss. And I know they were just shocked coming from the mainland. But people in Hawaii do that. You know, they're very kissy-kissy and very friendly. And I wanted an atmosphere where my children will have the greatest opportunity to excel, bar none. And I found that Hawaii gave us that opportunity. There was no doors. My oldest daughter is an actress. And she shared with me, and she said, Dad, you know, living in Hawaii, I got an opportunity to play the leading roles in a lot of white roles in movies and things, not movies, plays, because that's the way Hawaii is. So when she got to the mainland, she had all this vast experience playing major roles, and she was able to get more jobs. And she said that was so wonderful. And she thanked us for our top support of all that she was doing, you know, in that area, which was so difficult when she got to the mainland. And Kim, oh my goodness, she was my little rebel. She had so many wonderful ideas, and she would just take off in a tangent, you know, and I would just get scared to death. You know, we paid money for her to go somewhere, and she kept the money and hitchhiked with her friends. And that's scary for a father, you know. What are you gonna do? She was always like that, but she was just had her own way of doing things. And I never forget that she mentioned that she was in my class in Hawaii, and she would call me daddy. Of course, that's natural. And the other kids were trying to call me daddy. I said, don't try it. And they were saying, Mr. Jones, it's not fair. I said, what's not fair? They said, can we get all A's in your class? Teacher's pet, teacher's pet. I said, no, Kim is getting all A's because she's very smart. I said, take one of the hardest problems I just assigned you for homework. And Kim will go to the board and do that problem. And they picked one that was real hard. Kim had no trouble at all. She went to the board and put the down, you know. Then they realized she's not the teacher's pet, she's smart. It's just a wonderful, and I taught my son too. My son was at the Our Lady of Good Counsel Catholic School too. It was just a wonderful experience in Hawaii. Everything was just beautiful for the whole time we were there. And we had very, very few racial type problems, very, very few. And I realized this because I met a lot of high ranking officers who got assignment to Hawaii. I met an admiral, Black Admiral Gravely, who got assigned to one of the fleet in Hawaii. We were in the same fraternity. That's how I got to, you know, meet him and know him. And I met some generals and others too. And I would have a big party every so often, and everybody would come. And my next door neighbor, Evelyn, she's always surprised at all these important people coming to my party. Like when Admiral Gravely would come, everybody stop what they're doing and go to the door. This is a Navy admiral. But we all had this wonderful atmosphere that we could grow in. I was so happy that my children could grow up in such a wonderful atmosphere.
Mhm. One of the
Okay.
things that's talked about before is, and I never knew this, but that Hawaii at this time in our history, Hawaii played an important role for the military. And they often would send Black officers to like the highest potential officers like Admiral Gravely and others to have big commands in Hawaii because it was a place that was uh, a bit more it wasn't Altus, Oklahoma, let's put it that way. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
I believe that, Kim.
Mhm.
Now, because we've had time to share such amazing stories and books, Kim, where can our readers purchase your books?
Sure. Both books are available for sale on Amazon.com. So you can go through this QR code here, but you could also just go to Amazon.com and put in Soaring, My Improbable Life, or On Life, Things I Should Have Told You, and the books will pop up and you can purchase them there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we have just a few minutes here, so I'll just take a moment for maybe about 30 seconds for closing remarks. Taylor.
Sure. Yeah. Again, I'm really glad that I could come on and be a part of this. Grandpa and Mom, it's always good just to see you guys. But I really do find a lot of value in both of these books. I know, Mom, you said at 18, I probably wouldn't have sat down and listened to you dictate it to me. But I did sit down and read it cover to cover when you gave it to me my freshman year of college. So don't underestimate how important the things you have to say are to both Sam and I. And Grandpa, similarly, I think, although, I mean, your book is a different kind of narrative, but it has a lot of, the same messages that just come with a little life story to go with them. So I see both of your voices reflected in your books and the messages that I've received anyway my whole life contained in them. So thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Kim.
Yeah, my reflection as we close here is just how lucky I have been to have a father like my dad. You can see he's an incredibly positive, optimistic person who makes change wherever he goes. He's still engaged in life and enjoying every day of life. And I just find that to be the most inspiring piece. And it's really shaped who I am today. And to have Taylor be here as well, and all those messages going generationally, I just feel very lucky in that respect. So thanks for having us on, WD.
My pleasure. Closing remarks, Major.
Well, I'm just happy that you guys invited me, and I'm happy that my life has taken the path that I dreamt that it would take. And I'm so happy that everything seemed to have worked out so well. My 3 kids are doing so well. They're wonderful people. And all my 4 grandchildren is it 4? 6? Are wonderful people. And I hope that I had just a little bit of influence in there. And it just makes things so beautiful now in memory and in anticipation to what's coming next.
Thank you. Major, Kim, Taylor, it has been a pleasure and a joy having you on the show. And I just thank you for sharing your stories, because if we don't, who will? And this is WD Foster Graham from Conversations with Al McFarlane. They say, believe in dreams and never give up. And we'll see you in the next go round.